Welcome back to the Table Rush Talk Show, where we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, marketing, and personal growth. I'm your host, Mischa Zvagansoff, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Gina Bianchini, the CEO of Mighty Networks. Gina has been a trailblazer in creating platforms that focus on community building and member connections. In this episode, we dive into how Mighty Networks stands apart from the rest, the secrets to building high engagement communities, and how creators are achieving insane profit margins. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. Gina Bianchini, the CEO.
Bianchini.
Oh, say it again.
Bianchini.
Bianchini.
With a K. Like, now, my ability to say your name is very low.
Hey, it's phonetic, just like it's spelled. Zvagansoff.
Oh, God. I'm like going to embarrass myself.
Try. You got to try once.
Okay, wait. Say it one more time.
Zvagansoff.
Zvagensoft.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good for try number one.
Zvagensoft.
Yeah, there you go. It's actually Zveg, not Zvag. So Zveg.
Zveg. Zveg.
Yeah.
And saw. Oh,
Yeah, Zvegansoff. Yeah. Technically, it's
Zveg.
Zvegantsov, but no one can say it that way if you put the Russian, like the true Russian flair on it.
Okay.
But yeah, grandfather came over from Russia in 1917. I'll just give you the rundown reat quick, and
Yeah,
then you can tell
please.
me about yours. Yeah, sure. So,
Great.
yeah, czars were getting thrown over. We owned a lot of land in Russia. My great grandfather was captain of the palace guard for the czars. And so they were coming with, to chop our heads off. Family put everything they could on carts, ended up in Paris. My grandfather was 19 at the time. They started a cab company in Paris. 1935, my grandmother, who was young, hippie, kind of world traveler, out of line for the 30s, ends up in Paris, jumps in a cab that my grandfather's driving, and they fall in love.
No.
Yes.
That's a good
It's a
story.
good story, isn't it?
It's a good story.
Yeah. So, got the very traditional Russian name. I'm actually more German than anything. Mother came over from Germany. This is not about me, but anytime I
Yeah.
can talk about me, I'll indulge at least a little.
I mean,
Um,
why not?
Yeah, so I'm more German than anything, even though I have the super Russian name. My father and mother were trying to buy a house when I was being born or get a car or
Yeah,
something. And
yeah.
my grandfather was like, I'll give you the money for the down payment if you name him Mischa.
No way. And they're like,
Yes.
okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah, we love that name. I know.
That's
So fun, right?
awesome.
Yes.
So
So
is
go ahead.
Misha short for anything?
It is. It's Russian for, so it's Mike to Michael, Misha to Mikhail.
Ah,
Yeah, so it's Russian for Michael, in
I
effect.
love that.
Yeah, thank you. And
That.
yeah, go ahead. Any more
So
questions? Oh,
my
yeah, go.
my great grandparents on my dad's side came over from Italy. My grandmother's side of the family, New York to the coal mines in Pennsylvania. My grandfather's side of the family directly to San Francisco at the turn of the century. So my great grandfather was like a young boy during the 1906 earthquake and literally like lived through it with his father and with his family. And then they met in San Francisco. My grandfather then and grandmother came to Cupertino to open a nursery and an orchard in 1950. And then my parents met in college at Santa Barbara and then moved back to Cupertino. And I grew up in Cupertino. Uh, and now I live in Palo Alto. I did get out for a little while here and there, but I live about 25 minutes from where I grew up. And the funny thing is, I have this like joke slash rule with myself that as long as I'm living north of this one street called Embarcadero, I'm good. Like I got out, like I got out of home. I like went to college. I like I'm walking distance from where I went to college, but I'm like, okay, I did it. But at the same point in time, I'm like 25 minutes from where I grew up.
So what was get I so you got out and moved across the street, and then now
No, no,
you're
no.
back. Is that
I
what I
went to
heard you?
DC for a
Okay,
while. I've
okay.
been in New York. I've lived in
Uh,
San Francisco. But I
look,
tend to come back to Palo Alto because I like the weather. It's
yeah.
gorgeous. And it's kind of like living in the Shire from Lord of the Rings. And so it's a pretty lovely existence. And I feel very grateful to be from here. So where other people have to leave to go back and hang out with their family, my family's here. So that's nice.
So amazing. I love the Bay Area. My mother uh, ended up in Berkeley when I was
Oh, wow.
probably, yeah, 11 or 12. And um, so I would visit all the time, ended up living there for a bit, but just love, love, love the Bay Area. So I grew up in Jackson, Wyoming, which is beautiful, another beautiful, amazing place, but ended up in the San Francisco Bay Area for a bit. So I know the area a little. It's beautiful. Um,
It's nice.
yeah. Everybody watching and listening should go to mightynetworks.com, where you can create a community, monetize a community, I think is the best part about it.
And
Uh,
courses. Don't forget, you know, let's
Courses.
not forget.
Yes, yes. Okay, I'm at mightynetworks.com right now, and it says the community platform for events, memberships. It's scrolling through courses, challenges. Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Yeah, no, rotating right through those. Just
Yeah,
get through them.
and you happen to be the CEO. So I think
Do.
it's hilarious that I've got the CEO of MightyNetworks.com. What's your revenue per chance, if you don't mind me asking?
We haven't talked about it publicly. We are in mid eight figures and growing.
Amazing. Active community, active paying members. Are you allowed to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we don't really talk a lot about our numbers. We actually talk more about our customers' numbers because they're what really matter. So we've seen over last year, and this number is significantly higher this year, over $370 million generated from uh, subscriptions and members paying our hosts across Mighty Networks. And this year, we haven't announced the new number, but it is significantly higher. And the most exciting thing I would say from a financial perspective is right now we have been able to get our hosts, as we call them, some pretty spectacular results where we're talking $1 million launches with 99% margins because the software does such a good job of connecting members to each other, breaking the ice and giving them lots of reasons to come back, not just your content or not just, what you would experience if it was like viewed as more of like a fan community.
Mm. We've got Facebook groups, we've got Circle, School seems to be all the fun out there right now. Alex
Mhm.
Hermosi seems to be the face of that. We've
Yeah,
got Mighty Networks in that bucket. Yeah. Uh, Not to give light to them, but just to say, hey,
sure.
uh, I wasn't necessarily going to dive into this right away, but
What's different?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry to just be like, hey, and even to talk about
Happy
those
to.
other things, but
Yeah.
yeah, go, go.
Yeah. So fundamentally, I built Mighty Networks, and fortunately for me, I've been able to recruit an amazing team to build it with me because I want to live in a world where every person on the planet has the opportunity to be a part of not one, but multiple truly amazing communities that are how they develop as a professional, how they achieve results in transformation for themselves as people, as they navigate their interests and their passions and their goals. And this is something that is a mission for me. I've worked on it since, going back to 2003, in my last company before Mighty, and in Mighty Network since 2017. And what is really important about what we're doing is that we're the only platform where people are actually introduced to each other. We are the only platform that has really invested in what we call people magic, which is how are members connecting with each other? How are they finding the most relevant members in that community or in those courses or challenges or events? And what that means is that all the other things that you do in a community or a paid membership or events or live streams all get significantly more engagement because there's a foundation of members who are meeting and building relationships with each other. And we're using advanced technology that we've built as well as AI to do this. It makes all the difference in the world. So we can predict with 93% accuracy at this point whether a community or a course will succeed or fail. And it is purely based on how the relationships between members are developing. Like, how often are people connecting with each other? It's not about the content. It's not about the features. It's not about, uh, you know, who's using it or who's not using it. Although we've got some pretty significant people using it and making a significant amount of money using Mighty. It is about, are we able to make the most relevant connections between members and bring people back? That's it. So that's, I think, a little bit of a long answer. I'm really proud of the fact that we've inspired a lot of other community platforms, some of which you've named. And the things that we're working on, are really, what's so fun about my job is we're co-creating it with some of the biggest creators and most successful brands in the world. And seeing people come from other platforms to Mighty and being able to do, for example, a $5 million launch in 10 days and then run it with 99% margins because the software is connecting people to each other. I haven't even gotten into the strategy stuff that we've built with People Magic Profit and stuff like that. But that I think kind of gives you a little bit of a sense. And I can obviously share my screen and show you in person what are some of the things that are kind of different. But I welcome the fact that there's been this really renaissance of people discovering community and the positive impact community can have on courses and digital businesses. I think what happens a lot of times, though, is sometimes it's either just about the money or just about the adoption or the referrals, as opposed to who are people actually meeting and are those relationships valuable? And are you getting extraordinary engagement that turns into extraordinary retention, that turns into incredible habits and practices that then turn into really easy and natural conversations and word of mouth that then bring in new members for free. And I think a lot of the other folks out there are really focused in on, like, well, how do you build your audience? And then how do you build your funnel? And then how do you do your squeeze pages? And then how do you do your 30 email sequence? And then how do you get people in? And then how do you hammer them with content and then hammer them with more content and even more content until you blow yourself out? Oh, I forgot one thing. And then how do you make sure you go back on the socials to tell everybody how much money you're making with that, with that community? It's like, whoa, dudes. Like, on the other hand, we've got folks that are making $5-10 million and they're like, I'm good. I don't need to talk about it. I've got an incredible community that is bringing value to each other. And I'm seeing an evolution of my role from creator and content creator or course instructor to, oh my God, I'm a host. I'm a host. I'm hosting a party here and people are into each other and I can come and go as I please. It's not about me. It's about relationships.
It's a good vision, Gina. Thank you for that. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Creating opportunities for interaction within the community members, it sounds like
Yeah.
uh, awesome. And then the you create an opportunity for such a vibrant community experience, and then also to obviously take advantage of whatever the host, I think you call them,
Yeah.
or us, their content to to engage with that content, and the experience is
Yeah.
so vibrant and rich that people are like, you got to come check this out,
That's
right?
exactly, and that is exactly what's happening. So, uh, there is magic in making the connections. It's it's an art and a science. And we've really focused in on the art so that we can turn it into science.
I love it. 99% profitability.
Yeah.
That what does that mean? So
Yeah.
somebody does a lot. Yeah, talk to me
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
So typically the number one question that I hear from creators when they're exploring, let's just take this simple business model of like a paid membership for a community. So, oh, let me ask you, what's the first question that you would have about it in terms of like the work? What would be the like where would you think that the most work would be for you?
Yeah, so I'm just as I'm watching stuff scroll by, I'm like, all right, you've got courses, membership challenges on there. I'm thinking that I'm gonna have to create
A lot
like a
of
challenge.
content.
Yeah, yeah, create a lot of content, and then
Mhm.
also like bring disparate platforms,
Yeah. Okay.
right? Like I'm like,
So,
ah,
right. All right.
yeah,
So number one, we move you and we'll like move you for free.
yeah,
We include that on our courses plan and above. So we move you. So that's off the table in terms
okay,
of work. The
yes,
second thing is most, I would say 99% of creators have been um, indoctrinated in this world of like, it's all about my content. And to be fair, on social media, it is all about your content. But let's just play out courses, for example, where it's all about your content. You're supposed to create this amazing course. You like get your camera set up, you got your fancy schmancy microphone, you're like all ready, you've got your screen share and you think that the value, because the work you've put into it is to come up with the framework, turn it into what? Let's call it 5 to 10 hours of course material. And, historically, until very recently, you would, and I guess some people are still doing this, although I think it's becoming less and less in fashion, is that then you're going to put your course material on a course platform.
yeah.
What's the completion rate of courses right now?
Is it like 3% or
Yeah.
5% or something
So,
ridiculous like that?
so all of the quote unquote value you think you're creating is actually being interpreted as work by the people
Mm.
that you want to help and you want to serve. Worse, there's all these gurus out there that are like, set it up, it's passive income. Well, the only way you're actually going to create passive income is if you create so much value in an ongoing, especially value around recurring revenue, is it's in relationships because basically what we know in Silicon Valley is if you have your choice between creating an audience or a network, and specifically a network effect, which is when you create a network such that it gets more valuable to every member of that network with each new person who joins and contributes, sounds kind of like a mighty network on purpose. So if you can have an audience or a network effect, you want to take a network effect like every day of the week. It's
Yeah.
it's why it's why today, we've got trillion-dollar companies from network effects like Meta and content companies with audiences like Disney. Awesome, but nowhere near the value of a network effect business. So that is a network effect is by definition going to have more engagement. People are finding each other, they're coming back for each other. So, what that means is that a community, when designed for a network effect, is going to run itself. And when a community can run itself and the content that you're creating isn't so that somebody sits down and consumes your course, because they're not doing that. But rather, you can actually imagine making those connections between people. And then, hey guys, here's the challenge for the week. And oh, by the way, you might want to watch this 20-minute video that will set up the challenge for the week and will give you a little bit of background.
Mm.
So hopefully you hear the distinction that it's not about trying to create 18 bonuses of all of this stuff that's like stuff that your member is gonna have to like consume, but rather it's about setting up experiences for your members to do together. And that shift is something we call community design. And um, it works so well. Like I built it for people, having watched literally, I've had a front row seat over the last 15 plus years to over 3 million, nearly 4 million actually, communities created. And it's very clear to see why they work and why they don't, and when they're going to be MIA. Excuse me, let me say that over again. When they're going to be DOA. Also MIA for engagement. What?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is there a feedback loop as I'm creating my community, my course content that's like you're missing the mark? You might want to
Oh,
like a
yeah.
real-time feedback loop.
Oh, yeah. It's called a
To,
live stream. So, no, it's true. So I'll just share my own story. I totally like, first of all, we never even thought we were going to have courses on a Mighty Network. But right after we launched, we got a lot of early adopters who were course creators. And they're like, guys, you need to have courses
mm,
on a Mighty Network. Like this is obvious. And we're like all looking around. We're like, really? Like, so we go and earnestly like play nicely with all the course platforms and we make it really like, hey guys, look at this. It's like we're friends with each other. We're on the same team. You can like zap things. And our early adopters were just like, oh my God, that's so great. Thank you for that. No, we actually want it in my Mighty
native.
Network natively. So we built it out and we have seen, so today, over like anybody who's earning any money on a Mighty Network is using both our course content or what we call table of contents. So you can use it in a lot of different ways. It's very flexible, and community. And they're pulling them together in a single, we have the equivalent of spaces. So the difference with Mighty's spaces is that you can have multiple features in one space. And so having these things together in one place is what creates the margin. It creates this ability for people to be like, oh, all right, like I got things to do. I got people to do them with. I've got the live stream as the host, where I built community design as a masterclass that I was doing live because I realized that like I actually knew it. I knew something about something. So I like started teaching about it. But I originally was so intimidated by courses. I was like, I don't have anything, to talk about, in part because a lot of our early adopters were like, I have like a PhD in like SCORM and like all of this stuff. I was like, oh wow, like you really have to like have a lot of experience to do online courses. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, I mean, I'm just looking at the scrolling on the bottom. If you see me looking over here, it's because I'm looking at content that you've created your stuff. So
Oh,
I'm paying attention. I might just be looking over
I was
there
not thinking
sometimes.
that you were
Okay.
surfing the web. Like
Okay. Good.
I was
Um,
pretty sure that
hey,
you weren't surfing the web.
hey,
But thank you for clarifying. I
yes,
appreciate
yes.
that.
So anyway, just like TED, as in TED Talks, I'm just looking at some of the people that
Yeah.
are utilizing your platform that are realistically doing the $5 million launches, things like that. And I would imagine of any community or any platform, that's 1%, right? So we've got TED, Tony Robbins, Mind Body, Launch by Mel Robbins, Esther Perel. I have idea who that is. Doesn't matter. But you've got gym launches on there. Son of a gun. Isn't that Hermosi? Uh, some others that are utilized. None. Isn't that like a like a like a
Yeah.
drink, like a fizzy
It's a
drink or something?
supplement. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
supplement. But so it goes without saying that you have an effective tool for building robust community
Yeah.
that are great for launches, for hosting course content, lives, doing all this, creating that interaction. Marie Forelio,
Forleo.
yeah,
Yeah.
saw her
Forleo.
speak, man,
Yeah.
she was awesome. Love that. So I think that that's goes with. I think what's exciting about having you on the line actually, as I was digging in,
Mhm.
so I just want to say, everybody, go to Mighty Networks, check it out. It's there. It obviously works well. You're probably frustrated with Circle. I personally hate Circle and anything that I'm in where they push me to Circle, or like there's just. But it sounds like you've got something that's robust. If you want to show it off and share your screen, we can. But
Yeah. I'm happy to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think before we get into that, or maybe you tell me which way you want to go. But
Sure.
so I got a buddy that went to Stanford back in the day, and like I don't know, seven no in the 80s, I'm guessing it is 80s or
Okay.
90s or something like that. But I was like, as I'm a fledgling entrepreneur coming out of, I was super successful in sales for a long time, retired, got as a single dad, got my boys through high school. Then I reemerge, as many of us do, second act of life. I'm going to build something online, right? And so,
Good.
yeah, thank you. And so I actually teach people how to guest speak on podcasts, go on what I call an influence tour or a podcast guest speaking tour. And because I bring all my good old school sales skills into the
Ooh, I
new
love it.
realm, right? Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
fun.
It's
So I have a
pretty sweet.
community. It's called the Influence Army, just to give you a frame of where I'm
Yeah.
coming from. And again, not to make this about me, but I'll get to the dang point if I
I
can.
mean, it is your podcast. You can
Yes.
make it, dude,
Good.
you can make it like
Hey,
as much about you. Like I got plenty going on over here.
I'm
I'm happy to
gonna
sit
get
back.
to, yeah, I mean, I wanna we'll talk about Mighty Networks all day, but I'm getting to the point as fast as I can. So, as I'm growing what I do and building my influence army,
Yeah.
and I basically host my membership on a Google Doc and Vimeo, right? I'm like, here's my roadmap, because most of these platforms are horrible to work with. They're not user friendly. If you're a solopreneur or a solopreneur with a
Right.
VA, it's just it's a mind, energy, time suck.
Right.
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 So I guess maybe you could speak to that. Is it user friendly? You got a VA or an assistant? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can help
Why
you.
don't you let me share my screen? I'm going to just
Yeah,
show you a little bit of a behind the scenes tour.
cool. Before we get to
Okay.
that,
All
so
right.
I'm starting to play on LinkedIn, right? And I'm like, oh, Gina, that's you, Bianchini.
Teeny. Yeah.
Yeah, Bianchini. I'm like, oh, this would be an awesome person to have on my podcast. So I do the Facebook reach out, or not Facebook, LinkedIn.
Uh-huh.
Right? You say yes at the time, blah, blah, blah. You get your assistant involved. And I'm so excited. So I'm on a walk with my buddy who's, Stanford CEO type. And I'm like, oh my God, I had the biggest win today. He's kind of mentor friend of mine. And I'm like, I
I hope this
DM'd the,
story has a happy ending.
it has an amazing happy ending. You're here. Oh, so yeah, you're like, get to it. So
Ah,
I say, oh yeah, I reached out to this lady, Gina Bianchini. I said it wrong at the time. I will be.
hi.
He goes, "Oh yeah, Gina. Yeah, Mighty Networks." He's all. I went to Stanford with her, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Well, she wouldn't know me." His name's John, by the way, John Gerard. But
Oh,
he's like, "Oh yeah,
oh,
she's
I know John
amazing."
Gerard.
Do you know John Gerard?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I do,
anyway,
in fact, know him. So
you
yeah.
amazing. So yeah. So I was like, "Well, that's freaking cool." And so then I'm digging a little bit more on you, and then you're like started uh Ning, which I
Mhm.
didn't know about Ning till I was digging, but point is you started Ning, you co-founded it with Mark. Might be butchering his last name, but Mark I say Anderson, but I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. How do you say it?
Andreessen, but yeah.
Andreessen. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, is this the like Andreessen Horowitz? Like, wait, what? And so I'm digging more and I'm like, wow, like Gina's up to some cool stuff. And what was really intriguing to me was not so much the Mighty Networks, which I will give you an opportunity to share it because I want to see for sure. But I'm like, oh, I want to know more about the Stanford experience. Like you've been hanging out with some big power players, you've built amazing stuff. That's what's intriguing to me about you. And I don't know if like now, okay, so you grew up in Cupertino. Were you like groomed for this life that you have, or were you called to it? Or maybe speak to that for a minute. Does that
Sure.
make sense? Like,
Yeah, I'm
thank you for
we're
listening. Whew.
yeah, we're on a journey. We're on a journey.
Yes. Holy,
Um,
the floor is yours.
yeah, so I mean, no, I wasn't groomed for this. My grandparents opened a nursery in Cupertino. My dad was a school teacher. He taught high school history. My mom had like 14, you know, different side hustles, especially while she was raising the three of us. Um, but Cupertino was a really tight-knit culture and a tight-knit community when I grew up in it, where people explored their interests. And, for my father, it was restoring old cars. For my mom, it was like raising guinea pigs. And there were always clubs. There was always people coming together. It's one of the reasons why, Apple is in Cupertino. It was a place where the Homebrew Computer Club met to build PCs. It was a community of tinkerers and engineers and people that were coming for college and the defense industry. A really special time and place to be born into. But I wasn't an engineer. I,
You
if
weren't?
anything,
Is that what you said?
no,
No.
I wasn't. I was I always knew I wanted to have an impact. I always knew I wanted to do something that could um, mean something. And when I was 11, my dad was killed in a car accident by a drunk driver when he was on active duty for the National Guard. And I think at that point, number one, community became even more important.
Mm.
That tight knit community really rallied around me and my family. And the other thing that has certainly been true for me is he made a really important impact on the people around him. And I saw it modeled both from my mom and my dad that making people feel comfortable and bringing them together and just keeping a situational awareness for, what do people want and what do they need to realize their fullest potential and feel like they belong. And so my story and my journey is really first and foremost having a fascination with people systems and how do new things evolve. And when in the early 2000s, as my friends from Reid Hoffman to Mark Andreessen and all these guys that have gone on to do really amazing things, uh, I was exposed to the early days of social networks and what was happening at this intersection of how we start to network people. And I just fell in love with it. And it became something that I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my career doing. And so fast forward and tying it back to what we're building at Mighty Networks, I want every aspiring entrepreneur, every creator, and every brand to be able to benefit and create the same kind of impact and the same kind of meaning and purpose from community, from a network that we've seen really shape culture, shape finance, shape how we spend our time and energy. that the large social networks really built out and really have shown what's possible. And now what I think we're going to see is this really amazing opportunity for any of us to have the ability to create our own network effect for our own purpose. And we're just in the earliest days there. But it's why what we're building at Mighty with people magic is so important, because people magic and this ability to connect people, it goes somewhere that's different. And it's one of the reasons why I think sometimes what we see with whether it's the big folks that are using us or the person who's starting a business from scratch and their first community is they regularly say, Mighty is different. It feels different. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something different in the experience. And I think
Mm.
what that is that not only do we come at this from a very authentic place, but we also understand how to build a network effect, which is very different than somebody coming at this from a audience perspective, where it's
Mm.
like, yeah, let's throw a bunch of people in a place and have chat. And what happens then is that the same five people dominate the chat, and that's the entire experience of everybody. And it's a way to have community, but you can also have community with two tin cans and a string,
Can I
and
ask
it
you a
doesn't make it
question?
good. Yeah.
So in high school, are you a partier? Are you a track and field? You're a cheerleader or you're driven for business? What's your high school experience?
Well, I played field hockey. I did also run track and I played soccer. But yeah, so I was a all-American field hockey player in college or in high school and actually in college as well.
Eh,
Um, and so I would say I partied in high school and college for that matter. I keep saying college. Yeah, so in high school I did student government and I played field hockey
Yeah,
and I like paid attention to school.
yeah.
And when I was a junior, I went to Washington, D.C. as a congressional page for 6 months. So I even like had my own, I went and lived on my own at 16. Uh, and I feel really fortunate for where I grew up and the experiences that I had.
So are you, I don't know if driven's the right word. Are you inspired to do this stuff? Are you being encouraged to do this stuff by mom, perhaps stepdad? You said your father passed away when you were 11. Like, what's the impetus? Is it just a natural progression for you where you're like, yeah, I want to succeed? Or I don't know if
Yeah,
succeed's the right word, but
I would just say like I don't remember a moment when anyone had to ask me to do my homework.
yeah,
I am very self-motivated.
that's cool.
And I think
Eh,
you kind of have to be to, take on the role of founder and
Heck yeah.
for me it's very much like come on, like let's go put on a show.
Yeah. So did you always know Stanford? Are you like in high school, you're like, yeah, Stanford's the logical next step, or how does Stanford come about?
Um Well, when I went to DC, I realized it was cold and it rained all the time. And like the East Coast didn't have good food relative to California. So I came back the beginning of my senior year of high school and I said to myself, I need to play field hockey. I want to go to a national university, meaning that it was not going to be just a regional California school, but that it was going to attract people from all over the country and hopefully all over the world. And that was kind of my criteria. So the good news is I'm living in Cupertino. There are actually two places in California that you can go that actually fit that criteria. You can go to Berkeley or you can go to Stanford. And, fortunately I got into Stanford and I went.
So Stanford, so you're in Stanford, you're going there. Um, you are inspired in Stanford, like I want to start a business, or what's going through your brain in
No,
Stanford? Yeah.
so I was a political science major because I was obsessed with people systems. Like,
Mm.
how does an idea, for example, like if you think about it, it's actually kind of interesting, I think at least, which is how did smoking go from being something people did to something that people don't do? Like, or how does culture change? Or how do our expectations of the communities around us and what's the norms? Like, how do those all happen? So I've always been fascinated by that set of questions. And so that's what I studied at Stanford. And between my sophomore and junior year in college, I went to Washington. I went back to Washington, D.C., and I worked for a political action committee. And I was like standing outside the White House with a sign. And I was looking around and I was like, um, I want to be inside. And so I went back to Stanford, and going into my senior year, I was like, I'm going to try this business thing because it seems like you can have an impact, you would have resources, but it also seems like it's kind of fun. And I never did like Future Business Leaders of America, like in high school or anything like that, but I just had like ideas. And I did raise rabbits, and I sold them to pet stores when I was about 10. And
Successfully or
oh yeah,
oh good.
oh yeah. I had a very healthy mini lop rabbit business as a 10-year-old. So then I worked in a management information systems department between my junior and senior year of college. I didn't realize going into it that that was going to be computers, but it was. And everybody was really cool. And we worked on, a budget upload process for this company for all the different departments to be able to upload their budgets to AS400 computers. And it was awesome. And so then I decided when I came back to school, I was like, I'm going to go into business. And I had a job at the Stanford Daily where I sold ads, which was really fun, which basically meant at Stanford, at the Stanford Daily, like you answered the phone, but I would go and pitch, small businesses around Palo Alto. And then I went into investment banking because it was what people were doing. And it was also really fun. And all the people seemed like they were cool. And they were.
So you make it sound like that was easy. My perception of I'm going to get into investment banking is it's perhaps not as easy as deciding, or has that been the nature of your life where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this and bam, it happened. Does that question make sense or
I think it's an interesting question. I think, I've been at the right place at the right time a lot, but I also work my ass off. Like, so it's hard to sort of say it's hard to sort of say, which one is it? But I will say that the reason I did investment banking was I wanted to learn how to be a professional. I like interviewed these, I was interviewing with these people and I'm like, I don't know what these guys do, but I like it. And I'm gonna learn from them. And I did. And it was the start of just amazing professional experience, amazing network. And my friends from Goldman Sachs are still my best friends. And they are people I will see tomorrow for the 4th of July.
hey,
We're going to have a
that's
barbecue.
amazing. Oh my gosh. And talk about
Yeah.
what will you talk about at the barbecue? What's going to be the topic of conversation?
That's a really good question. Probably my friends' kids, probably uh, the state of the state, and probably we'll catch up on work stuff, what everybody's doing. And, my friends fortunately are really building some interesting businesses and working on some very interesting things. And they're also really fun.
Mm.
The end.
Hey, the state of the state. Talk to me about the state of the state.
I mean, just the world is at a pretty interesting, a pretty interesting moment. And there's a lot of really, I was on for some reason today is a podcast day. So I was on a podcast interview this morning with one of my Stanford Business School professors who is probably the foremost expert on power, named Jeff Pfeffer. And I was asking him about it because, if you sort of study the laws of power and like, how people acquire it and how people lose it, one of the really interesting dynamics is the, the person with power who doesn't want to let go.
Mm.
And I think that that's a really interesting lens to look at the current state of not just one party, but kind of
Both.
the whole political parties.
Oh yeah, the all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm anticipating that will be a topic of conversation. I will say those conversations are better had privately over a 4th of July barbecue with friends
Absolutely.
as opposed to on the social media or a podcast.
We do not need to go down that rabbit hole. I imagine you are naturally hopeful about the state of things, even though it might seem like
Absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, maybe you
Well,
could
and
speak to
again,
that for a minute.
because
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time living in the future. I spend a lot of time playing out how technology is going to evolve. Because if you think about it, technology leads culture. It leads, what we think is possible. And so I wake up pretty much every morning, pretty early. Like to think about it as the reverse night owl, or which how founders are like, it's like, oh, we stay up all night coding. I'm like, I get up really early and do a lot of work. So it's playing that out, and I am nothing but hopeful.
Mm,
I think we're going to be living in a world where technology innovation, again, it's moving very fast, so it scares a lot of people,
mm,
but it is the answer to prosperity. It's
mm,
the answer to growth. It is the answer to opportunity for more and more people to realize their fullest potential. And it's, I view it as a, responsibility of being an adult, that I need to be working towards building things that offer something new, so that as we push through this moment where a lot of the problems that are viewed as fueled by technology, one of the things I think is fascinating is, there's this narrative of evil technology that's so smart, and it's manipulating us. Well, first of all, people are pretty easily manipulated, unfortunately. You just need to go to Vegas to see that's a truth. However, part of the reason why I'm so optimistic about where we're going is that so much of the challenges or problems with technology actually come from relatively unsophisticated technology being deployed to 3 billion people around the world.
mm,
And what I think is going to happen is, as we get smarter and smarter about, how do we surface the right people to each other? And how do we break the ice? And how do we create not one social media feed, but rather a portfolio of communities that allow us to kind of tap into different parts of ourselves? So first of all, I think that's going to be more fulfilling. I think we're going to see, as more and more people feel like they belong. Yes, there's elements of tribalism in that, but there's also elements of I'm good.
mm,
And in the again, another truism, which is hurt people hurt people. And as more and more people have that portfolio of connection, they have those relationships, as technology that we're building at Mighty, and all of the people that are going to be inspired by it. As we build that, we do our jobs right, there's more and more really incredible experiences and relationships and connections. Now, what I know, having done this kind of work, and again, Mighty is my second, not my first, community platform built to scale. I've now built software that's been used by over 100 million people around the world. And what I what I know to be true is that for every technology that can be used for good, there is a equally attractive evil use case.
Mm,
And so the key is that you build platforms to be as powerful as possible, and then you work your ass off to get more people doing things that are a net positive.
mm,
And that might be viewed as naive by some, but I refuse to live in a world where, we're just doomed to skepticism and negativity and like, you know, the downfall of civilization. And I think instead what's real is that we're going to innovate our way out of this moment
mm,
into, I would say, when software can play the role of co-host in our life, not as our AI assistant, like sure, we're going to figure that out and people are going to do that. But if the only role of AI is to be an assistant or all of these things that more and more people are spending all of their time, not with other human beings, but with AI assistants, we're essentially bubble wrapping folks in ways that are not great, not great. But instead, the vision that we're working towards at Mighty is where AI can play the role of co-host. So it's actually, how do we make the tools and the mechanisms by which people meet and build relationships with other human beings gets more and more sophisticated. And I think that there will be a enormous need for this and an enormous demand for this. And we're already seeing it in just these early days.
mm. Good. Did you run into glass ceiling stuff? Do you feel like as you're breaking into the investment banking world?
No,
No. I
no.
think
I
what's,
mean,
oh, go ahead.
like we're all human beings. We have, I always loved the, what was it? Unconscious bias. I'm like, nah, most people know. We all know. Uh, but we're human beings. Here's what I would say. I would say I have always known and am very comfortable with the fact that I have chosen a path less taken.
Mm,
I know that I am working on something hard. I know that. Like I have got the systems, I've got the practices, I've got the support to be able to do that. And I also believe that it's okay that life isn't fair. And when you are operating with in the most competitive industry in the whole world, like this technology attracts the 0.00001% of the most competitive people in the world. That's okay. Like everybody is going to do what they want and need to do to succeed with their vision of the world. So I think what's important to me is number one, I have one, I like it, I test it, and I spend my time working on recruiting you and everybody else to this vision, and be able to deliver it on platforms like with what we're building at Mighty. And so I don't spend a lot of time thinking about or uh, sort of stewing in whether it's, you know, the lot that I've been given or, what's harder or easier for me. Um, I just don't spend a lot of time on it.
I love it. It's amazing. I think what's awesome is that what's normal for you. It's like, yeah, it's just the natural progression of, and stripping out judgment of one path is better than
Yeah.
another. I think it's great. I grew up in Cupertino, Stanford. Next thing you're hanging out with Mark and in the investment banking world, like it's normal, natural next thing to do. And what's interesting to me about it is, I grew up in Wyoming, Montana, get to hang out in the Bay Area. And so I'm not embedded in that culture, but just due to the nature of the success I've had or the things I've got to do. Like that's that world that you're in is like, how am I trying to say it? It's like, uh, words are escaping me. It's been a long day.
It's
It's
all
like
right.
I don't know if idols are the right word or just like oh, that's a cool space to be in that's not really accessible for 99, as you said,
Yeah.
99.9% of the world. So it's kind of it's cool. I don't know if that made sense or not, but it's just an observation.
Maybe I was following you. I think I was following you. The idea that there are different, different worlds. Here's what I would say. Um, Number one, I grew up in a working class, middle class family. And, my grandparents were entrepreneurs and small business owners. And my dad was a teacher. And on my mom's side, my grandfather was a teacher. Like that was the world I came from. So, uh, the other thing that I know is the people that are being held up as super fancy pants people at this point, they all came from very modest means,
Yeah,
very modest backgrounds. And what we are seeing right now is actually the power of network effects and the fact that some people, a small number of people have them, and a lot of people are spending all of their time and energy building audiences. And it's one of the things that, we've set out to democratize and bring to more and more people, which is that every business owner, every individual should be able to create a community that brings people back, engages them, and creates something really, really special, because that is how we create an equal playing field.
I love it. I know that I have flexibility in time. I'm not sure if you do, but I
I
definitely
do
want to
not,
give you, okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've got somebody who will be wanting me in 2 minutes.
Okay. Let's go. You've got a minute and 30 seconds to share your screen, but we won't even go down that path. I will say this has been a
Fine.
ton of fun. Thank you for indulging my line of questions. I would
Sure.
say in a minute or less, anything that you would be remiss that you didn't say, or you're like,
I
gosh, I
don't think
really just
so.
want to.
No,
Okay.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.